The reservation was for two. Chen had made it 3 weeks in advance, carefully selecting the corner booth at Rosewood Bistro, the kind of intimate, candlelit restaurant in downtown Portland where the wine list was longer than most novels and the soft jazz floated through the air like something half remembered from a beautiful dream. She had chosen this specific restaurant because it was the kind of place you brought someone when you wanted them to know they mattered. When you wanted the evening to say what your voice kept failing to express. She had made the reservation for two. She arrived alone. It was the 14th of October. And Maya was turning 32 years old on a Tuesday evening with rain tapping gently against the tall windows and the whole world smelling like wet leaves and cold pavement. She wore the emerald green dress she had bought specifically for this occasion, a wrap dress that her best friend Priya had helped her choose 3 Saturdays ago at the boutique on Morrison Street. "You look like someone who deserves to be taken somewhere wonderful," Priya had said, holding up the dress against Maya's frame. Well, Maya laughed and said she was being ridiculous. She didn't feel ridiculous now. She felt small. She had texted Diane 4 times. The first text sent at 5 o'clock, just leaving the apartment. "So excited for tonight. See you at 7? The second text sent at 6:15. "On my way. Traffic is pretty bad. Still on for 7? The third text sent at 6:58, standing outside the restaurant in the rain. "I'm here. Are you close?" The fourth text sent at 7:23, sitting alone in the corner booth with a glass of sparkling water and a breadbasket she couldn't bring herself to touch. "Diane, it's my birthday. Please just tell me if you're coming." Diane did not reply. Diane, it would later become clear, had simply forgotten. Not forgotten the way you forget where you put your keys or the name of an actor in a film you half-watched on a Tuesday night. Diane had forgotten in the complete, architectural way that suggested Maya's birthday had never occupied meaningful space in her mind at all. Diane was at a work happy hour. Diane was laughing with colleagues at a bar 6 blocks away. Diane would, when confronted the following morning, say the words that Maya would replay for weeks afterward. "I just lost track of time. You know how I get? Why do you always make everything so dramatic?" But that was tomorrow. Tonight. Maya sat in the corner booth at Rosewood Bistro in her emerald green dress, and she tried very hard not to cry. She was not entirely successful. She pressed her fingers beneath her eyes carefully. The way women learn to do when they're wearing makeup, they spent 40 minutes applying and they absolutely refused to let the evening take that from them too. She looked out the window at the rain-slicked street. A couple walked by sharing an umbrella, the woman's head tipped against the man's shoulder. A group of friends burst out of the bar across the street, laughing loud enough that Maya could hear them through the glass. A dog sat patiently outside the bakery next door while its owner was inside, its tail wagging hopefully at everyone who passed, even the dog, Maya thought. Had someone waiting for it. She picked up the menu and held it in front of her face even though she wasn't reading it. She had memorized the menu 3 weeks ago when she made the reservation. The way she prepared for everything thoroughly, earnestly, with a kind of careful hope that she was only now beginning to understand people found exhausting. She was methodical. She was punctual. She remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every small detail people mentioned in passing about their lives. She kept a notebook, an actual paper notebook, the kind with the elastic band that snapped satisfying around it, where she wrote down things that mattered to the people she loved. "Priya is nervous about her presentation on the 20th. Call her the night before. Mom mentioned her knee has been hurting. Remember to ask." Diane said she's always wanted to try the ramen place on Burnside. Plan a date there. Diane had never asked about the ramen place on Burnside. Diane had never asked about very much at all. Maya was starting to realize. She lowered the menu. The restaurant was warm and golden and filled with the gentle noise of other people's happiness. At the table nearest to her, a woman was celebrating what appeared to be a promotion. Her friends raising glasses of champagne, while she covered her face with her hands in the way people do when joy surprises them. Across the room, 2 older women held hands across the table, saying nothing, needing nothing more than the candlelight and each other's presence. Near the bar, a man was clearly working up the nerve to say something important to his date. Maya watched him open his mouth twice and close it again before she looked away, not wanting to intrude on the private theater of his courage. She should leave. She knew she should leave. She could go home, change into her pajamas, watch something comforting on her laptop, order pad thai. She could call Priya, who would immediately say all the right things and suggest coming over with wine and her cats. She could do any number of things that were sensible and self-protective and reasonable. She ordered a glass of the house red instead, because it was her birthday. And she had worn the dress and she had made the reservation. And she was 32 years old and she had spent enough of her life making herself smaller to fit into the shape of what other people needed her to be. If she wanted to sit in a beautiful restaurant on her birthday and drink a glass of wine alone, then she was going to sit in a beautiful restaurant on her birthday and drink a glass of wine alone. And she was going to do it with her back straight, and her chin up and her eyes only slightly damp at the corners. She was going to be okay. She repeated this to herself like a quiet incantation. Her name was Simone Beaumont. 29 years old, third generation New Orleans, transplant to Portland by way of Seattle and a particularly bad winter, and a good friend who said just come. Just try it, you have nothing to lose. She'd been waitressing at Rosewood Bistro for 2 years and 3 months. And she knew this restaurant the way she knew her own apartment, every creak and quirk of it. Every regular customer and their preferred table. The way the kitchen got loud on Friday nights and the way the candlelight caught the crystal glasses just after sunset and turned the whole room briefly amber. She noticed things. This was perhaps her defining quality. Her grandmother had called it a gift. Her last girlfriend had called it exhausting. Simone had decided the truth was somewhere in between. She simply saw people. Not in a mystical sense, not in the way self-help books talked about being present or conscious or aligned with the universe. She just paid attention. She noticed when the couple at table 7 stopped talking naturally and started performing conversation. She noticed when the older gentleman who came in alone every Thursday was having a harder week than usual. She noticed which customers were celebrating and which were enduring and which were somewhere in that wide, complicated middle territory that most of life occupied. She noticed the woman in the emerald green dress the moment she walked in. There was something about the way she carried herself, carefully, deliberately, the way you carry something fragile. The hostess seated her at the corner booth, and Simone watched her sit down and look immediately at the door, and then at her phone, and then at the door again, with the particular quality of attention that belonged to waiting. Not the comfortable waiting of someone who is simply early, but the anxious waiting of someone who is hoping. Simone had Section 3 that evening, which included the bar seating and the first 4 tables along the east wall. The corner booth was Section 4, Kelsey's section. But Kelsey was in the weeds with a large party but had ordered complicated cocktails and kept changing their minds about the special. And the woman in the emerald dress had been sitting for nearly 20 minutes with only a glass of sparkling water and an untouched breadbasket. "I've got corner booth," Simone told Kelsey, who was balancing 3 plates and a bottle of wine, and looked at her with pure gratitude. She approached the table with her usual warmth, her notepad tucked into her apron. Her smile the genuine kind, not the professional brightness some servers deployed like a shield, but the real thing. A little crooked on the left side from an old habit of chewing on pencils. "Hi there," she said. "I'm Simone. I'll be taking care of you tonight." "I'm so sorry about the wait. Can I get you started with something?" The woman looked up from her phone, and Simone saw it immediately. The careful composure. The fractional redness at the corners of her eyes. The way she had positioned her menu to partially screen her face from the room. The single place setting at a table set for 2, the second menu still in place, the second water glass still full. "A glass of the Malbec, please," the woman said. "The house red, of course." Simone paused just briefly, not long enough to be intrusive, long enough to be human. "Are you still waiting for your other guest, or it's just me?" Maya said. The words came out with a quiet precision that Simone recognized as the kind of dignity people deploy when they are determined not to break. "Just me tonight." "Perfect," Simone said simply, and she meant it to land as acceptance rather than pity. And from the small exhale Maya released, she thought it had. "I'll be right back with that wine." At the service station, she poured the Malbec carefully, chose a glass that caught the light well, and stood for a moment thinking. She'd been a waitress long enough to understand that her job was not simply to take orders and deliver food. The restaurant, at its best, was a kind of sanctuary, a place where people came to mark their lives, to celebrate and mourn and connect and escape. The service was the architecture of that sanctuary. Done right, It could transform a difficult evening. This woman was having a difficult evening. Simone was not going to fix whatever had brought her here alone. She couldn't. But she could make the next hour or two feel less like something survived and more like something chosen. That was within her power. Small power, maybe. But power. She brought the wine. The mushroom risotto is exceptional tonight, Simone said, setting the wine glass down. Chef Alvarez got a delivery of fresh porcini this afternoon, and he's been, honestly, insufferably smug about it all evening. It's warranted. Maya looked up, and the ghost of something crossed her face. Not quite a smile yet. The shape of one, is it? She said, genuinely. I've been stealing bites from the past every chance I get, and he keeps swatting my hand away. Simone shook her head with theatrical regret. Rude, I'm a vital part of this operation. This time the smile came. Small, still careful, but real. What else would you recommend? Are you in the mood for something that feels like a celebration? Simone asked, or something that feels like comfort? The question was more perceptive than Maya had expected from a waitress she'd just met. And she felt something in her chest shift, a small seismic movement. Like ice beginning barely to consider the possibility of thaw. Comfort, she said. Definitely comfort. Then absolutely the risotto. And I'd suggest the roasted beet salad to start with the whipped goat cheese. It sounds fussy, but it's actually quite soothing. And if you want dessert, and you should want dessert, the chocolate lava cake takes 20 minutes, so I'd put that order in now. That's quite a lot of food. Maya said, it's that kind of evening, Simone said simply. And something in her tone was so gently knowing that Maya felt her eyes sting again, not with sadness this time, but with the startling warmth of being seen by a stranger. Okay, Maya said. Yes to all of it. Simone wrote it down, capped her pen, and then did something she did not strictly have to do. She said, Happy birthday, by the way. Maya stared at her. How did you're wearing a dress that says tonight is important. You're sitting in a corner booth for two, alone, with the look of someone who had a different plan for this evening. And you ordered the wine quickly and without browsing, which means you needed it. Simone shrugged lightly. Also, there's a small star sticker on your phone case, and my little sister does that on her birthday every year, birthday stars. She calls them. She's 11. But the logic holds. Maya looked down at her phone. There was indeed a small gold star sticker on the case. She had put it there that morning without thinking, an old habit from childhood, her mother's tradition. Stars for birthday girls, her mother used to say. She had forgotten it was there. I'm 32, Maya said. The words came out differently than she expected, not sad exactly, but layered. 32 and alone on her birthday in the restaurant she'd planned as a gesture of love for someone who hadn't come. 32 and somehow still surprised by this. 32 is a good one, Simone said with calm certainty. Is it? 32 is when you stop trying to convince yourself you're fine with things you're not fine with. In my experience. She smiled, that crooked left side smile. I'll get your salad started. She walked away. And Maya watched her go, the easy confidence in her stride. The way she greeted the couple at the next table with the same warmth but completely different energy. Calibrating herself to each person like a musician changing keys. Her hair was natural and full, pulled back from her face with a few escaping curls framing her temples. She moved through the restaurant with the particular grace of someone who is completely at home in their body and their work. In their space. Maya picked up her wine and took a slow sip. It was a good Malbec, for the first time since she'd arrived. She relaxed slightly into the booth cushion. Not fully, but slightly. She put her phone face down on the table. The beet salad arrived in a white bowl. That looked like a small painting, deep garnet beets arranged in a fan over clouds of whipped goat cheese, scattered with toasted pepitas and a drizzle of something honey bright. It was, as promised, quite soothing. Maya ate slowly, the way she rarely let herself eat without rushing or reading or checking her phone. She watched the rain outside, which had softened to a mist now. She listened to the jazz, a trio in the corner she hadn't noticed when she arrived. A bassist and guitarist and a woman on keys who played with her eyes half closed and her head moving in small, private communion with the music. Simone returned at intervals to refill the water, to check on the salad, to bring the risotto when it arrived in its wide, shallow bowl. fragrant with porcini and finished with a scattering of fresh herbs. She did not hover. She did not perform concern. She simply appeared when needed and stepped back when not, with an attentiveness that felt like care rather than service, though it was. Also impeccably professional service. Once, passing the table with plates for another guest, she paused briefly and said, without stopping, "How's the risotto?" "Extraordinary," Maya said. "Told you. Don't tell Chef Alvarez. Your secret is safe." At 9 o'clock, when the restaurant had thinned to a quieter configuration of tables, Simone came to clear the risotto bowl and lingered a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Better?" she asked. It was a simple word with a wide reach, and Maya considered it honestly. Was she better? Her phone had buzzed twice, once with a text from Priya, "Happy birthday, gorgeous. Are we celebrating this weekend?" And once with a notification from some app she didn't recognize. Nothing from Diane. "Yes," she said, and she meant it, and found the sincerity of it slightly surprising. "Good." Simone tilted her head slightly. "Can I ask what you do?" "You have the look of someone who thinks for a living." Maya laughed, a real one, the first of the evening. "I'm an architect." What does that look like?" "Like you see spaces before they exist," Simone said. "Like you're looking at this room and rearranging it slightly in your head." Maya opened her mouth and then closed it. "I was actually thinking the window placement is wrong," she admitted. The west-facing windows would catch the sunset beautifully if they were 3 feet taller, and the whole evening ambience of this room would improve dramatically. Simone stared at her. Then she laughed, full and unguarded. And it was such a good laugh, warm and surprised and delighted, that Maya felt it somewhere in her sternum. Like a chord struck on an instrument she'd forgotten she owned. "You've been sitting in here for 2 hours silently renovating the restaurant," Simone said. "I do it everywhere. My friends find it slightly insufferable." "I find it fascinating," Simone said, and there was nothing performative about it. She pulled out the chair across from Maya and rested her hands on the back of it. "If you could change one thing about this room." "Just one." "The windows," Maya said immediately. "Show me." Maya picked up her pen. She always had a pen. An architect's reflex, and on the back of the paper receipt slip from the breadbasket, she sketched quickly the outline of the east wall, the existing window placement, the suggested adjustment. 3 feet of height, the angle shifted 5 degrees south. She slid it across the table. Simone studied it with genuine attention, her head tilted, and then looked up at the actual wall, and then back at the sketch. "The evening light would hit the bar," she said slowly, "right along the bottles." "It would look like something on fire," Simone said softly. "The good kind." Their eyes met. Something happened in that moment that neither of them would have been able to precisely articulate if asked, a recognition, perhaps of a frequency they both broadcast on without knowing the other could receive it. The kind of moment that doesn't announce itself as significant but is absolutely significant. The pivot point of a story. The lava cake arrived, carried by a different server. And the moment redistributed itself into ordinary time again, but it didn't disappear. The chocolate lava cake was exactly what Simone had promised. The plate warm. The cake yielding to the spoon in a slow dark flood, accompanied by a scoop of salted caramel ice cream that was melting gently at the edges, and a single birthday candle, small and white, that Simone had lit herself in the kitchen while the other server carried the dessert out. Maya looked at the candle and felt her chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with sadness and everything to do with the unexpected tenderness of the gesture. Simone appeared at the edge of the table. "You don't have to make a wish," she said. "But you can if you want." Maya looked at the small flame. She thought about wishes, about the ones she'd made at other birthday candles. The earnest childhood ones. "I wish for a puppy. I wish to be a great architect." And the grown-up one she'd stopped saying out loud because wanting things too visibly felt dangerous. Somehow she blew out the candle. Simone refilled her wine. Without asking, "Can I sit for a minute?" Simone asked. "The last table in my section just got their check. I'm technically on closing tasks, but Jose's covering and he owes me one." Maya gestured to the chair across from her. "Please." Simone sat down with the easy comfort of someone who has been on their feet for 8 hours and is grateful for a chair, pulling it slightly sideways so she was at an angle rather than directly across. A posture that felt somehow more intimate and less confrontational. She rested her chin in her hand and looked at Maya with open, unhurried curiosity. "Tell me about the person who didn't come," she said. It was a direct question, and Maya appreciated its directness. She'd expected polite skirting, so what brings you out tonight, or do you come here often? The social negotiation around the obvious. "Her name is Diane," Maya said. "We've been together for 14 months. She paused. "Together in the technical sense. I'm not sure what we've been in any other sense." "What does that mean?" "It means," Maya turned the wine glass slowly on the tablecloth, a gesture she made when organizing thoughts. "It means I have been in this relationship with my whole self, and she has been in it with, I think, about 40% of herself. And I told myself 40% was enough. That I was asking too much. That wanting someone to actually show up, literally show up to your birthday dinner was excessive." Simone said nothing. She listened with her whole face. "I made this reservation 3 weeks ago," Maya continued. "I sent her the details in a calendar invite. I texted her a reminder this morning. And she forgot. She was at a work happy hour and she forgot." Maya shook her head. Not with anger. She'd moved past anger in the last hour, somewhere between the risotto and the jazz. Pianist's most recent song, but with a kind of tired clarity. "And the worst part isn't that she forgot. The worst part is that some part of me is not surprised." "When did you stop being surprised by her?" Simone asked. "Maybe 6 months ago," Maya said. "Maybe before that." She ate a spoonful of the lava cake and let the chocolate and salt and sweetness occupy her mouth for a moment. "I think I've been trying to love her into being more present. Like, if I was attentive enough, considerate enough, patient enough, she would eventually reciprocate. Like love is a debt that gets paid if you accrue enough of it." "That's exhausting," Simone said quietly. "It is," Maya agreed. "I'm very tired." They sat with that for a moment. "I did that once," Simone said. "With a woman named Kara. I spent 18 months trying to be the perfect version of myself so she would choose me fully. I made myself smaller and quieter and less. I thought if I was less, she'd have more room and would expand in that space and meet me." She shook her head. "She just took the extra room and spread out further. Some people have an infinite capacity for taking space." "What happened?" "I moved to Portland," Simone said simply. "New city, better winters than Seattle, actually. Portland winters are terrible," Maya said. "They're terribly beautiful," Simone corrected. "There's a difference. Everything's gray and wet and the whole city smells like coffee and pine and it's..." She made a gesture that encompassed something ineffable. "Honestly romantic if you're in the right frame of mind." "You like the rain," Maya observed. "I like how it makes people slow down. Everyone walks slower in the rain. Pays more attention to where they're going." Simone looked at Maya. "I think that's how I ended up noticing you when you walked in tonight. You were walking slowly. Like you were paying attention to what you were walking into." "I was nervous," Maya admitted. "I wanted the evening to be. I had planned it carefully. I always plan things carefully. I wanted it to feel romantic, like a gesture. Like proof that I was willing to invest in us." "That's a beautiful impulse," Simone said. "To want to prove love with care. It's a useful impulse for architecture," Maya said ruefully. "Less useful for relationships with people who don't value that particular language." "Not everyone's love language is acts of service," Simone agreed. "But the person who is right for you will be someone who, at minimum, doesn't forget your birthday." "That does feel like a minimum requirement," Maya said. "A pretty low bar." "Honestly," Simone said, and her tone was so dry and warm at the same time that Maya laughed again. And the laughter felt better than it had any right to feel, loose and genuine and a little startled. Like a laugh that had been waiting for permission. It was 10:45 when the restaurant fully emptied around them. The jazz trio had packed up their instruments, and now a quiet playlist drifted through the room, something instrumental and soft. Piano and cello, the kind of music that asks nothing of you. The kitchen staff moved through closing routines, the sound of it distant and rhythmic. The overhead lights had been dimmed further and only the candles on occupied tables remained. Which meant only theirs. Simone had been officially off the clock for 40. Minutes she had stayed, not from obligation. Jose had told her 3 separate times he had the closing tasks covered. And Miguel, the floor manager, had smiled at her, on his way to the back office with an expression she chose not to examine too closely. She had stayed because the conversation was the kind of conversation that happened rarely, the kind that created its own gravity. Where leaving felt not just difficult, but somehow contrary to something important that was happening. They had talked about architecture, and New Orleans, and the specific quality of October light in the Pacific Northwest. They had talked about Simone's grandmother, Celestine, who had run a restaurant in the Garden District for 30 years and whom Simone credited with her ability to read people. She used to say the way someone treats a server tells you everything about who they are and who they could be. Simone had said, "I still think about that." "Your grandmother sounds extraordinary," Maya had said. "She was the most extraordinary person I've ever known." Simone's voice had shifted, not sadly. Exactly, but with the particular weight of someone who carries a great love for a person no longer present. "She died 3 years ago. I came to Portland partly because I needed to start somewhere new. Somewhere that wasn't layered with her absence. Did it work?" Maya had asked softly. "Partially. Grief works like that in my experience. You don't outrun it, but if you move, it changes shape. Becomes something you can carry differently." She had looked at Maya. "You're very easy to talk to." "You're very easy to trust," Maya had replied. And she'd meant it as a compliment and watched it land that way, Simone's expression warming slightly. Like candlelight catching something reflective. Now the restaurant was theirs and theirs almost alone. And Maya was on her second glass of Malbec and feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time present. Not performing presence, not working toward presence through effort and planning. Simply inhabiting the moment she was in without wanting it to be different. "I should probably go," she said. "Without moving?" "Probably," Simone agreed. Also without moving, they looked at each other in the candlelight. And the moment had the quality of something that required acknowledgement. "This was not the birthday I expected to have," Maya said. "Is it better or worse than you expected?" Maya considered this with genuine seriousness, looking up at the ceiling for a moment, a habit she'd explained earlier from calculating proportions. She always thought spatially in terms of volume and structure and weight. "Better?" she said finally. "Much better. And that feels strange to say, because the reason I needed it to be better is Diane still didn't come. That's still the fact of this evening." "But the evening itself," Simone said. "How was the evening itself?" Maya looked at her. The candlelight was doing something generous to both of them, softening and warming, turning the ordinary beauty of Simone's face into something that felt almost unfair in its expressiveness. The dark eyes with their attentive intelligence, the full mouth that smiled crookily on the left side. The small crescent scar at the edge of her jaw she'd explained was from a childhood encounter with a bicycle and a parking meter. "The evening itself," Maya said, "was one of the best evenings I've had in a long time." Which makes me slightly embarrassed about how low that bar apparently is. "Or it makes you aware of what you've been missing," Simone said. "Being talked to like I'm interesting." Maya said, and she meant it lightly, but it came out with more weight than she intended. "You are interesting," Simone said, simply and directly. "You renovate rooms in your head. You keep a notebook of other people's important dates. You've been sitting here quietly rebuilding your understanding of your own relationship and doing it with such honesty, and you haven't once." She gestured at Maya's phone, still face down on the table. "You haven't checked your phone in 2 hours. That takes either supreme indifference or genuine presence." "I'm terrified of what I'll find on it," Maya admitted. "Or more precisely, what I won't find." "Diane still hasn't texted," Simone said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know. It's face down." Maya looked at the phone. "There's a version of this night where I pick it up and there's an apology and I decide. It's enough and I take an Uber home and I go to sleep, and tomorrow I'm back inside the 40%. And I've convinced myself it's okay." Simone didn't say anything. "And there's a version," Maya continued, "where I don't pick it up yet. Where I let tonight be what it is. Where I acknowledge that I sat in this restaurant alone on my birthday and had one of the best conversations I've had in years, and that means something. About what I've been settling for." She looked up. About what I actually want. What do you actually want? Simone asked. The question was quiet and genuine, with no agenda she could detect, no leading weight to it. Just the question. Maya looked at her for a long moment. She thought of her grandmother's phrase about birthday stars. She thought of the wish she had made over the candle. She thought about the sketch she had drawn on the receipt slip, and how Simone had looked at the wall and seen exactly what she saw, had immediately understood the quality of the light she was describing like something on fire. The good kind. I want someone who pays attention, Maya said. I want someone who shows up. I want someone who, when I tell them about the windows being wrong, understands what I mean without me explaining it. She stopped and laughed a little at herself. I want someone to show up to my birthday dinner. That's not an unreasonable thing to want, Simone said softly. It feels unreasonable sometimes. When the person you're with keeps making you feel like it is. That's what they want you to feel, Simone said with quiet precision. People who can't meet a reasonable need will tell you the need is unreasonable. It's more comfortable for them than change. Maya looked at her. How are you this insightful? Is this just very good waitress training? Simone laughed. 2 years of therapy, my grandmother's collected wisdom, and the particular education of watching people at their most vulnerable and human for 8 hours a night. She tilted her head. Also, I studied psychology for 3 years before I transferred to culinary school. You went to culinary school? I did, and then I decided I liked the front of the house better than the kitchen. And then I ended up in Portland. She spread her hands in a gesture of cheerful inevitability. Life is a strange map. It really is, Maya agreed. Silence fell between them, but it was the good kind of silence. The kind that has weight and warmth and means that neither person needs to fill it with noise to feel safe. Can I give you my number? Simone asked. Her voice was measured, no urgency to it, but direct. That directness Maya had noticed from the first question about the empty place setting. The willingness to simply say the thing. I want to be clear about what I mean. I know you have a relationship you're sorting through. I'm not asking for anything tonight except the possibility that we could have this conversation again. That feels worth asking for. Maya looked at her for a long moment. She felt the precise, particular quality of the moment, how it existed at the intersection of her old life and whatever came next. How it was both an ending and a beginning without being the dramatic version of either. Just a question from a person who paid attention on her birthday in October, with rain on the windows and a candle still burning. Yes, she said. Please. Maya broke up with Diane the following Thursday. It was not dramatic. Diane, to her credit, seemed to understand on some level that what had happened the birthday, the silence, the 4 unanswered texts had crossed a threshold. She apologized, and the apology was genuine as far as it went, which was not far enough, and they both knew it. The relationship ended the way many relationships do, not with the bang of betrayal, but with the quiet, honest acknowledgement that 2 people had been in fundamentally different places and had perhaps always been. And that kindness required acknowledging this rather than continuing to paper over it. Maya cried on the drive home. Not a lot. Enough. She called Priya, who said all the right things, and then said, "Tell me about the waitress." Maya had not mentioned the waitress in any specific terms. She had said only that a kind stranger had made the evening bearable. How did you know there was a waitress? Maya asked. There's always a waitress, Priya said. Or a bartender. Or a stranger on a train. I've been waiting for yours. A pause. Tell me about her. Maya told her. Priya was quiet for a moment after. Then, Maya, she sounds like the protagonist of every love story you've ever cried at. I cried it up, Maya said. I cry at everything. You should text her. It's been 4 days. Is that too fast? I just ended a 14-month relationship. You ended a relationship that ended itself 6 months ago, Priya said. You've been doing the emotional work of grieving that for ages. 4 days is fine. Maya did not text Simone that night. She waited 1 more day. 5 days after her birthday. She sat at her drafting table in her home studio with a half-finished schematic for a residential project in Lake Oswego spread out before her, and she picked up her phone. And she looked at the contact she had entered as Simone Rosewood. with a small star next to the name, a birthday habit she carried into the ordinary world without meaning to. She typed, "This is Maya from the birthday dinner. I've been thinking about the windows." She stared at it for a moment. Then she added, "and other things." And then, quickly, before she could second-guess it, "Would you like to have coffee?" She put the phone down, she looked at the schematics. She picked the phone back up. Simone had replied in 4 minutes, "I was hoping you'd text. I've been thinking about the windows too. And other things." A pause, and then, "Coffee sounds wonderful. How's Saturday?" The coffee shop was on Alberta Street, the kind that had mismatched furniture, and very strong opinions about single-origin beans, and a chalkboard wall near the back where people drew things and wrote fragments of overheard conversation, and sometimes just the word hello in 11 different languages. Simone arrived first and chose a table near the window. Not because she was nervous, though she was a little, in the good way, the way that feels like standing at the edge of something rather than falling from it. Because she liked this particular table, the way the morning light came through the glass and lay in warm rectangles on the wooden surface. The way you could watch the neighborhood moving outside, the dog walkers and the cyclists, and the Saturday morning version of Alberta Street that was quieter and more honest than its weekend night self. She was drinking a cortado when Maya came. Through the door, Maya was in a dark gray coat over a cream turtleneck, her black hair down around her shoulders rather than up as it had been at the restaurant. She looked different in daylight, softer, somehow more at ease in herself. She was carrying a paper notebook under her arm, and she was looking slightly to the left of the door when she entered. And Simone later said this was the moment she understood something important. Maya was looking at the proportions of the entryway, the width of the frame relative to the height of the ceiling. She couldn't not, she was. As Simone had told her grandmother's photograph on her windowsill that morning, she talked to the photograph often. A habit she didn't apologize for, someone who sees things. Maya spotted her and smiled. And the smile was the real one Simone had worked to earn on Tuesday evening, open and warm and unguarded. The smile of someone who has decided, cautiously, to allow herself to hope. "Hi," Maya said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Hi," Simone pushed the menu across. "I already ordered. The cortado is extraordinary. The pour-over takes 20 minutes and is also extraordinary but requires a certain patience." "What kind of patience?" Maya asked. "The kind that trusts the process will be worth it," Simone said. They looked at each other across the table with the particular attentiveness of two people who have already established a connection and are now, in better light and fewer stakes, confirming it. "How are you?" Simone asked. "I ended things with Diane," Maya said simply. Simone's expression moved, something careful and genuine. "How are you feeling about that?" "Relieved," Maya said, with the slight surprise of someone reporting an emotion they hadn't fully predicted. "Sad, but mostly relieved. Which tells me a lot about the last several months." She ordered a cortado from the server, who materialized helpfully at her elbow. "And how are you?" "Good," Simone said. "Better since your text." She said it plainly, without performance. "I thought about waiting longer," Maya admitted. "To text, I wasn't sure what the appropriate—" "I'm glad you didn't wait longer." Simone said the cortados were excellent. They stayed for 3 hours. There is a way to tell the story of October through February in quick strokes, the highlights and turning points, and the first time they held hands. The first time Simone saw Maya's studio and stood in the doorway with that expression of focused wonder. The first time Maya visited the restaurant not as a customer but waiting at the bar for Simone's shift to end, talking to the bartender Robbie, who said, unprompted, "She talks about you, you know? She's not going to tell you that, but she does." But the true shape of those months was less in the landmarks and more in the accumulation of small things. The specific texture of a love that builds not in grand gestures but in the repeated, consistent evidence of being known. Simone remembered that Maya took her coffee with oat milk and no sugar. Not because she had written it down, but because she was the kind of person who paid attention and retained what mattered. When Maya was working late on a project, she called them the beautiful nightmares. These complex structural problems that kept her at the drafting table until midnight. Simone would text not "When will you be done?" but "I'm bringing dumplings, don't argue." and she would arrive with dumplings from the place on Hawthorne that Maya had mentioned once in passing. And she would sit on the studio couch with her book and not interrupt. And Maya would look over from the drafting table periodically and feel something she had no immediate name for that was in the neighborhood of "this is what I meant. This is exactly what I meant." Maya, for her part, remembered things. She was constitutionally incapable of not remembering things. She remembered that Simone's grandmother had made a specific dish, red beans and rice with a particular combination of spices, every Monday without fail for 30 years. And that this dish was memory and comfort and grief and home all in one for Simone. Maya spent an afternoon researching new, Allianz red beans and rice recipes, and then spent a Saturday morning attempting it and texted Simone a photo of the results with the message: "I've either made something beautiful or I've made a disaster. I need a second opinion." Simone came over and tasted it and sat down very quietly for a moment. She started. "Is it okay? I know it's probably not as good as your grandmother's. It tastes like hers," Simone said. And her voice was different, softer and thicker. Layered with something Maya understood was not sadness but its opposite, the feeling of a beloved thing being returned to you. "Maya, how did you?" I asked around online. "And I called your Aunt Therese." Simone stared at her. "You called my Aunt Therese?" "She was very helpful. And she told me approximately 14 stories about you as a child and sent me 4 photographs." "Oh no. The one where you're 7 and wearing a Halloween costume, that's..." "A crawfish," Simone said with dignity. "I was a crawfish." "It was a legitimate costume choice." "It was an inspired costume choice," Maya agreed. And Simone laughed that full unguarded laugh, and pulled Maya toward her from across the kitchen counter and kissed her for the first time. Tasting like Monday morning red beans and October rain and something entirely. Essentially itself, the specific flavor of a moment that was the beginning of something that mattered. Later, Maya would say, "I was going to wait until we finished eating." "You made me your grandmother's red beans and rice," Simone said. "I wasn't waiting." November came in with a wind off the river, and the city draped itself in the beautiful gray-silver watercolor that Simone had tried and mostly failed to describe to people who hadn't experienced it. The trees went amber and then bare. The coffee shops filled with students and remote workers and people who needed an excuse to stay inside and warm. The restaurants lit their fireplaces. Portland settled into itself. Maya and Simone settled into each other with the particular ease of two people whose habits and rhythms were, it turned out, genuinely compatible, not because they were identical, but because they fitted around each other in a way that felt organic rather than negotiated. Simone was a morning person. Maya was a night owl. Simone did the grocery shopping because she found it meditative and knew what to look for and could spend 40 minutes at the farmer's market talking to the produce vendor about heirloom varietals without becoming the kind of person anyone found irritating. Maya did the cooking 4 nights out of 7 because she approached it like architecture, structural, technical, a problem of building something from components, and she was excellent at it. They had fights. Real ones, not the polite managed disagreements of a relationship that hasn't found its depth. In November, they fought about Simone's tendency to skip meals when her restaurant schedule got chaotic. Maya came home to find her sitting in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, pale and slightly shaky with low blood sugar, and said things with a sharpness born of fear that she later apologized for completely and honestly. Simone said, "You were scared." "I understand. But don't talk to me like I'm a problem to be managed." And Maya had heard her and acknowledged it. And they worked through it, not perfectly, but truthfully. With the good faith that is the only currency that matters in the long run. In December, Maya took Simone to meet her parents. This was significant. Maya's parents, first-generation Taiwanese-American immigrants who had built a life in Portland with the specific precision and deliberateness with which Maya herself approached things, were welcoming and careful and watchful in the way of parents who love their child and want to understand who she is choosing. Simone brought red beans and rice, which she had cooked the night before in Maya's kitchen while Maya sat at the counter grading structural drawings for a student she was mentoring and pretended not to be anxious. "Are you nervous?" Simone had asked. "Extremely," Maya said. My mother will ask you 17 questions and 3 of them will seem unrelated, but they are all part of the same question. What's the question? Are you good to my daughter? Simone looked up from the pot. And what's the answer? Maya looked at her for a moment across the kitchen. I know what the answer is, she said. I want her to know it. Simone turned back to the stove. Then she will, she said simply. Good people recognize care. She raised you, didn't she? Maya's mother liked Simone. This was evident in the way her questions became conversations rather than interrogations. The way she asked Simone about her grandmother with genuine interest and listened to the answer completely. The way she pressed more food on her with a specific generosity that in Maya's family was the clearest possible expression of love on the drive home. Maya reached across the gearshift and took Simone's hand. Simone turned her hand over and laced their fingers. Together, they drove home through December Portland with the radio, playing something neither of them paid particular attention to in the wet. Streets reflecting the holiday lights and bright long ribbons, and neither of them needed to say anything because they were both in that precise moment exactly where they wanted to be. January brought the anniversary of Simone's grandmother's death. Simone had mentioned it in passing in November. January is hard for me, just so you know, and Maya had written it in her notebook without comment. January 7th. She did not make plans for January 7th. She did not suggest activities or trips or distractions. She simply cleared her schedule for that day and evening, moved a client meeting, and waited to follow Simone's lead. On the morning of the 7th, Simone woke before dawn and made coffee and sat at Maya's kitchen table in the particular stillness of very early morning with the city dark outside and her grandmother's journal open in front of her. She kept the journal always but read it rarely on birthdays, on the anniversary, on days when she needed the specific quality of her grandmother's voice, which came through the writing with remarkable fidelity. Warm and precise and generously wry, Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6, wrapped in a blanket, hair loose, wearing the expression of someone who has deliberately not asked what you need but is thoroughly fearing the expression of someone who has deliberately not asked what you need but is thoroughly quietly available. Simone looked up. Come here, she said. Maya came and sat down next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched. This is her handwriting, Simone said, touching the journal page gently. She wrote in French sometimes. Her grandmother was from Louisiana before it was fully American, so French ran in the family. She translated softly, we make red beans on Monday because Monday is for starting over. Monday says, last week is done, here's your new beginning, begin. Maya listened. She believed in rituals, Simone said. Not religious exactly, or yes, partly religious. She was Catholic the way New Orleans women of her generation were Catholic, which is a specific thing. But beyond that, she believed in the power of repeated action to make meaning. That if you did a thing the same way with intention enough times, you built something. Infrastructure for your life. That's architectural, Maya said softly. Yes, Simone said. It is. She looked at the journal. She would have liked to. She liked people who took things seriously. I take things very seriously. I know. It's one of my favorite things about you. They sat together through the morning. Simone cooked red beans. Maya made drawings, not for a project, just for herself. A habit she had when she needed to be quiet in her own mind. Quick sketches of things around her, the coffee cups, the journal, the way Simone's hands moved over the stove. Simone looked at them later and sat with them for a long moment. May I keep one? She asked. Keep all of them, Maya said. Simone kept the one of her hands on the stove. February 14th fell on a Saturday, and neither of them were particularly interested in Valentine's Day as a commercial event. Simone on principle. Maya on the grounds that if you need a designated day to be romantic, you probably have larger structural issues in the relationship, but they were both, it turned out, interested in love as a practice, as an ongoing commitment to choosing each other with intention. So they made their own ritual. It began at the farmer's market in the morning, which Simone navigated with the focused pleasure of someone in their native element, pulling Maya along by the hand towards specific vendors with the air of someone who knew exactly where the good things were. They bought blood oranges and fresh pasta and a bunch of herbs and a small bouquet of early tulips that Simone chose with the same consideration she brought to everything, looking at them from several angles before selecting the one whose red was the deepest dot in the afternoon they cooked together, which had become one of their preferred ways of spending time. Not because they were particularly coordinated in the kitchen, they weren't. They navigated around each other with the cheerful negotiation of two people who both had strong opinions about process, but because they both found the act meditative, tactile, a form of care that produced something tangible and warm, Simone made pasta with a brown butter and sage sauce. Simple and exact. Maya made a blood orange and fennel salad that she approached with the measuring and calculation of someone designing a structure, until Simone came up behind her and said quietly, "You're allowed to just trust your eye on this one." And Maya had laughed and set down the measuring spoon and tried it, and it was better. After dinner, Maya went to her coat and brought back something wrapped in brown paper. "I made you something," she said. Simone unwrapped it carefully. It was a drawing. Not a quick sketch, but a full architectural rendering. Done in Maya's precise hand with colored pencil, a rendering of Rosewood Bistro's dining room, seen from above and in sections simultaneously. The way architects see spaces they are redesigning. In the rendering, the windows on the east wall were 3 feet taller. The angle was shifted 5 degrees south. And in the rendering, the afternoon light was entering through those windows at exactly the angle Maya had calculated, falling across the bar in long amber shapes that did indeed look precisely like something on fire. The good kind. At the corner booth, rendered in tiny perfect detail, 2 figures sat across from each other. One in an emerald dress, one with a notepad in her apron. Simone looked at it for a long time without speaking. "I'm thinking of sending it to the restaurant," Maya said. "Anonymously. As a gift to the building." "Don't send it anonymously," Simone said. "Sign it, send it from both of us." Maya looked at her. "Both of us, yes." Simone set the drawing down carefully and looked up. "It's our story too. Not just yours." Maya felt something settle in her chest, not newly, but more deeply. The way something already true becomes more clearly, permanently true. The way a building doesn't become structurally sound all at once, but accumulates its strength through each beam, each joint, each carefully placed element. "I love you," she said. She had said it before. They had first said it in November in Maya's car, coming home from a dim sum place in northeast Portland, slightly giddy with MSG and pork dumplings in each other. But she said it now differently, with the specific weight of someone who means it as a statement of architecture, as a thing they were building together, stone by stone and window by window, with attention and care and the honest willingness to keep showing up. "I love you," Simone said. They were sitting at the kitchen table with the tulips in a jar between them and the drawing between them and the half-empty bottle of wine between them and the October restaurant, and the birthday candle and the mushroom risotto and the sketch on the receipt slip and 3 months of small rituals and genuine fights and red beans on Monday and a 7-year-old in a crawfish Halloween costume between them. All of it accumulated into the present moment, which was warm and specific and entirely unmistakably real. In March, they went to Rosewood Bistro for dinner. The reservation was for 2. They arrived together 5 minutes early. Both of them slightly dressed up, Simone in a deep burgundy blouse. Maya had bought her because it's exactly the color of the good Malbec. Maya in the emerald dress again, worn this time differently. Not as armor or aspiration, but as celebration. The hostess, a young woman named Donnie, who had started in November, seated them in section 2, a table by the window. Simone looked at the corner booth and then at Maya, who shook her head with a smile. "Not that table tonight. That table belonged to a different chapter. They had a new one." Miguel, the floor manager, passed their table and saw Simone and said hello with warm familiarity, and then looked at Maya, and then looked back at Simone with a particular expression of someone who has observed the beginning of a love story from a professional distance and is quietly, privately satisfied. "Good to see you both," he said. And there was something in the both that carried more than its single syllable. Their server was a young man named Oscar, who was relatively new and enthusiastic and explained the specials with charming over-detail. They ordered the mushroom risotto and the beet salad, because of course they did, and a bottle of the Malbec and the lava cake for dessert with a single candle. Because Simone requested it. "It's not your birthday," Oscar said. Slightly puzzled. "It's not," Simone agreed cheerfully. "But I'd like the candle anyway." Maya looked at her across the table with an expression that was love and amusement and gratitude all dissolved into each other when the dessert came, the same warm plate. The same yielding chocolate, the same salted caramel ice cream. Simone lit the candle and looked at Maya. "Make a wish," she said. Maya looked at the flame. She thought about wishes. About all the candles she had blown out over the years, all the things she quietly hoped for. She thought about October, about the rain on the windows. About arriving alone and leaving with Simone's number and the impossible. Compounding evidence of the months since that the universe occasionally, improbably, corrects itself. "I already have everything I wished for," she said. "Wish for something new then," Simone said. "You're allowed to want more than one good thing." Maya smiled. She closed her eyes. She made a wish. She didn't tell Simone what it was because some wishes needed space to become themselves. But it was something about the future, about windows and light and Monday red beans and the way love is not a found thing but a built thing. Constructed from intention and attention and the repeated. Courageous choice to keep showing up. She blew out the candle. The smoke rose in a small curl and dissolved into the warm air of the restaurant. At the corner booth, a woman sat alone looking at her phone with the particular anxiety of waiting. She was wearing a beautiful dress. She had made a reservation for two. Simone noticed her. "Excuse me for a moment," she said to Maya. And Maya followed her gaze and understood immediately. Simone stood up and walked to the corner booth and said, "Hi there. I used to work here. She paused. "I noticed you were waiting. Can I bring you a glass of wine while you wait?" The woman looked up with startled eyes. And Simone saw the whole story in a second, the careful composure, the untouched water glass. The second place setting still in place. "It's just me tonight," the woman said, with quiet dignity. "Perfect," Simone said, with the exact warmth of someone who means it. "Happy birthday, by the way." The woman stared at her. "How did you?" Simone smiled. "Can I get you started with something? The mushroom risotto is extraordinary tonight." At their table by the window, Maya watched, her hand resting on the rendering she had brought to leave with Miguel for the restaurant's files, the redesigned windows, the amber light, the two figures in the corner booth. She watched Simone stand at that table and extend the same attention, the same genuine care, the same capacity to make a stranger feel less alone in the world. She thought about infrastructure, about the structures we build to hold our lives, about how the best ones aren't the grand, dramatic constructions, but the ones built with patience and intention, reinforced at every joint, designed to let the light in. She picked up her wine. She looked out the window at March Portland, still wet. Still gray-silver, still beautiful in the specific way that required a certain kind of attention to appreciate. The kind of attention Simone had been teaching her to apply to everything. To slow down and look. To notice what's actually there. She looked back at Simone, who had made the woman at the corner booth laugh, the first real laugh of what had clearly been a difficult evening, and felt the familiar seismic movement in her chest. The gentle earthquake of loving someone who uses their particular gift, which is the gift of noticing. For good. Simone returned to the table. "She has a birthday candle coming," Simone said, settling back into her chair with the easy rightness of someone returning to where they belong. "And the risotto, and?" Maya asked. "And my number," Simone said with a small smile. In case she wants to talk to someone who's been exactly where she is. Maya looked at her for a long moment. "You know," she said, "I was sitting in that booth 5 months ago thinking there was nothing left to salvage from the evening, and?" Simone said, "And I was wrong." Simone raised her glass. Maya raised hers. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Some things are beyond the capacity of words to fully carry. And the right response to them is not more words but presence, the simple, radical, quietly revolutionary act of being entirely, attentively here. The candles burned. The jazz played, the rain moved gently across the windows, and at the corner booth, a woman in a beautiful dress who had arrived alone was, for the first time that evening, Almost smiling, Rosewood Bistro renovated in the fall. The contractor who did the work found, on file in the manager's office, a detailed architectural rendering of the east wall with handwritten notes in the margin: extend window height 36 inches. Adjust angle 5 degrees south. Anticipated light entry October through February, 4:45 to 6:15 p.m. It was signed. At the bottom right, in 2 different hands, they followed the plans exactly. On the first evening after the renovation was complete, the staff gathered near closing time to watch the light do what it had been calculated to do: enter through the taller windows at the angle that had been designed for it, fall across the bar in long amber shapes that looked absolutely like something on fire. The good kind, Miguel, who had worked at the restaurant for 6 years and had watched more of human life unfold in this room than he could easily count, stood with his coffee and looked at the light for a long time. Who sent the plans? Oscar asked. Miguel smiled. 2 regulars. Do they know it worked? He pulled out his phone and sent a text to the number he had for Simone plus Maya, a single photograph. The bar, the bottles. The amber light falling across everything like the last hour of an October afternoon. The reply came in less than a minute. 2 words like fire. And then, a moment later from the same number, a photograph in return. 2 women at a kitchen table, tulips between them, wine between them, both laughing at something the photograph didn't explain and didn't need to. The light in the photo was winter morning light, pale and silver, nothing like fire, but warm. Undeniably, structurally, permanently warm.